it almost didn't have enough like kindling.
Or too much kindling. I don't know. It was
Maybe there
all
was a lot
kindling.
of kindling and no fire ever. Maybe there was just too much rain. It was too wet in the mud and they never started the fire. I don't know.
Welcome to the table.
We're your hosts, Michelle and Laura.
This is where we talk movies, food, and the ways that they bring us together. Grab a seat. This episode starts now.
So this is the first film we're covering that actually came out in the movies. It's not a rewatch, if you will. If you're a new listener to our podcast, and one thing that we've really been doing this season is including some question prompts for all of you. And really encourage you when you're watching these films or listening along with us to bring these questions to your own tables, whether that's if you're going out to dinner with girlfriends, if you're having your own movie night with some friends, if you're sitting around the table with family. Keep these dinner parties and dinner tables flowing with good conversation. If you are listening along, please feel free to take a break and go get a snack or go get a beverage. Michelle and I had, a sweet Regency theme idea to do tea time. And then both of us are grandmothers and realized we didn't want to have Earl Grey caffeine before bed. I was going to do a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I was really trying to get into the theme, and I thought that the cherries could mimic the leeches in this film, which we will get into. But I just landed on a glass of sparkling rosé because it reminded me of Margot Robbie's cheeks.
I will try to locate the Pantone shade, but that is a very close match, I would say.
At least has like some shading in it. I think it's like a little bit more pink. Michelle, what are you enjoying tonight?
Okay, so I did try to stay with our tea theme, and I am using this very special antique tea set that was given to me by a friend of the show, my college roommate, Tamara. It is also comical because in yesteryear, sizes of glasses and teacups were quite smaller than the ones we drink out of today. So my tea bag, and I'm drinking peppermint tea, as Laura said, nothing caffeinated. It takes up almost the entire volume of the cup. It's pretty much like 50% tea bag and 50% water. And then I have it paired with a very historically inaccurate, both in time and region, Samoa Girl Scout cookie.
Okay, so Michelle and I have prepared lists of questions for each other.
My first question was, what made you want to go see this movie?
I have always tried, especially in recent years as I've become more and more of a cinephile, to not watch previews. But this preview, whoever did the cutting did a fantastic job because I was locked in. The minute they had the teaser, I was looking up when it was coming out. I was so excited to see this movie. And I also got to see it in the biggest theater at Jacob Burns, which was really fun. Like, I hadn't seen a movie in that select theater. So I think the things that I appreciated about it were heightened by being in this setting. I also love Emerald Fennell. I have had the honor of seeing a Q&A with her. I have seen Promising Young Woman. I saw Saltburn, which she did the Q&A for. As much as I like dark films, I can get a little bit queasy, especially like a movie like Saltburn, which goes in certain directions as well as this movie. But it completely disappears when I'm appreciating someone like her. So anything that she creates, I'm going to want to see. I love that she's a female director of our time. I love that she's just creating things that she wants to make. I think that it takes a lot of courage to show the really ugly parts of humans very outwardly and not subtly and as a metaphor or a symbol for something. She puts it all out there.
I find her so interesting. I'm realizing that I've only seen Saltburn. I have seen her act in a few things, but I think that maybe this is part of why I find her so fascinating and why I admire her as a creator. I like creative people who unapologetically do a bunch of different things, and that's who she is. In our Emma episode, okay, I was comparing Autumn de Wilde to Amy Sherman Palladino, who is the creator behind Gilmore Girls and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And I think I had said something like, both of them have this energy and attitude that's very get out of my way and let me do my work, and very don't really care what other people are thinking of them. And I think that Emerald has some of that. That's like the opposite of who I am. I'm always just trying to please everybody. And I think that my art suffers because of it. I don't put out a ton of things that people are criticizing. And I know my ego loves that because I love when people say, like, oh, you did such a good job, or I really like that. But it also means that the things that I create are really safe and that we all have things that we want to create or produce in some capacity. And we let judgment hold us back. So, one thing that I was really taking away from this movie watching experience is to try to shed some of that fear and just go ahead and make something, even if it is a little offbeat, even if it is weird, even if people don't understand it, and not feel like I have to explain myself.
What if this was her favorite movie that she's made so far? What if
It might be.
what if she loves this story? What if she loves the characters?
This movie did get a lot of criticism. And do you think that that criticism was fair?
This is just an overall disclaimer and something that I always try and preface, especially with doing almost like or putting on criticism hats on this podcast. I am absolutely amazed by filmmakers in the work that they do. And I can't imagine the amount of labor and love that went into this movie. So I can give my opinion, but it does not discount like the amount of minds that needed to come together to even make this, put it out there. I try a little hard to not be so brash in the things that I am dinging this movie for, because I just don't think this movie was for me, and there are aspects of the story that actually don't even have to do with Emerald Fennell that I think impacted how I felt about it. I came home from the movies and I was like, I said to Tom, I feel like I've read Wuthering Heights. And I might have read it and I just completely forgot. I might have read it in high school for an assignment. But if I were to read it today, I don't think I would have liked it. And my biggest criticisms with it is that I don't feel like the characters evolve at all. I think that they stay very consistent in who they are as children and who they grow up to be. And by the end, it's not a happy ending, and it's not a satisfying ending, in my opinion. I don't think that it's almost just like one straight line of bad decisions and a lot of sadness. So I don't know, honestly, if the execution is what people hate so much about it. I think that Emerald tried to do something in her way and her tone, and what she had to work with the framework is Wuthering Heights and the story as how it's written, and then making it her own. I think that the criticism is warranted because I do think that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and if it didn't land for people, it didn't land for people. But I stand true that this does not hinder my appreciation for Emerald Fennell as a creator whatsoever. If anything, I'm just excited that she's continuing to make more bad things that I don't like. I don't care.
There's a reason that I want to see this movie again, And that's because there was something about the creation of this movie that I was not aware of until after I saw it. My friend Caitlin brought up that Emerald wanted to make this movie through the lens of how she experienced reading this book when she was young. And I got, I'm always getting chills on this podcast, but I got chills when I heard that. I thought, I hope that every person who has an idea like that does something with it. I mean, maybe you can't create like a major motion picture, but do something with that thought or that idea that's nagging you. And I just thought, like, how fun? How fun is that to cast Jacob Elordi in this because it's who she pictured being on the cover of her paperback version of this. And this is a pretty unique, niche take. We see a lot of things in this film that don't completely make sense. But now having that context just gives me such a deep appreciation for her decision to make this movie in this way. If you haven't been listening to this the rest of the season, Laura and I, although Laura may or may not have read this book, are new to this whole Regency genre, both in literature. We still have never read any of the Jane Austen books that we can remember. And we hadn't seen those films either. So I knew that Wuthering Heights was written by a different author. It's written by Emily Bronte, but I didn't realize that there is actually like a pretty big time jump between when the Jane Austen books were written and when this book was written, around 30 years. And that this is almost in a completely different category. I think it's categorized as more of a gothic story. And now that I have a better understanding of the Jane Austen's stories, which are very deep and have their own complications and so many things to be interested in, they still are very like light and pretty. And I'm hearing like an orchestra playing very almost like tinkling type music. And we have the sheep and the green fields, where this movie is it's completely different. It almost seems silly to me that we are including it in this season. Like, yes, this is something that, you know, took place in the past. That's when the setting is, but this is just a completely different vibe, and not just because this is an Emerald Fennell movie.
It's a very muddy movie. Do you have a favorite production design moment?
The production design is one of the things that I loved most about this movie. It felt extremely immersive. And like you, Laura, I did also got to see this on the biggest screen I think I've ever seen a movie on, because I saw this opening weekend. And I really felt like I was there, and I was really had a front row seat to this story. I really loved the contrast between these very dark, very moody, very muddy, to use your word, scenes. And then all of the scenes where she was living with Mr. Linton in the second part of this movie, I like that it kind of felt, I don't know if I'm putting this in my head because there's literally a dollhouse part of this story, but I almost felt like I was living in a girl's dollhouse. I loved the fact that they had these shimmery ribbon fabrics, and I can't remember if that was part of the decor or part of someone's costume, but it didn't make sense. Like, I don't even think that they could have manufactured something like that at this time. But I love that this was an imagination of, they would have had it existed. When I think about what my favorite scene was from a production standpoint, the beginning of this movie feels especially dark and dreary. I mean, not a lot of good things happen. And we see Kathy's character just being distraught after Heathcliff leaves. So the scene where I'm trying to remember the details of this, whether she crawls over or falls over the wall into the Linton grounds, in my mind, that was akin to Dorothy walking into Oz for the first time. It felt like we fell into this completely different movie, and I had a physical reaction to that moment. I think part of me was so relieved to be in this other land that was like, oh, like I can catch my breath. It's not so stressful anymore. Like there are flowers here. There's people having tea.
Yeah, the fact that she actually has to go over a wall to get into this new world that she's so desperately trying to escape from the dreary one is so simple yet so complex in what they needed to build to get us there. And it's extremely different. So I thought that was just a really good like vehicle to move us between these two parts of Catherine's life.
How about you? I know that you already mentioned the walls in her bedroom and how they match
Yeah, I
your
know that's such
wine.
a specific part, but that is the one of the main things that I remember in the film because that was an Emerald decision and it's so specific, and the fact that they bring it back to when her and Heathcliff are having sex in the room and he's like licking the wall because it's her cheek, like just to be able to make that creative decision to like bring the erotic nature of the movie together is I just don't even know how you would conceive that. Sitting and thinking about, okay, how are we going to build the rooms in the house? I got it. We're going to make the walls look like Margot Robbie's face so that Heathcliff is extremely turned on when he finally gets into her new world. It's even more layered and heightened because if you think about it, the second half of the film is watching her sort of unravel to realize that this dream life that she kind of fell into or chose to move forward with is not actually where she wants to be. Like she would almost rather be back in the mud with Heathcliff, even though they both have all of this trauma and ickiness tied to their past. That's where they're most comfortable and where they're their most selves. This is what she does so well in her films is she goes there. She shows the ugly sides of all of us and makes it really gross and not something you really want to be watching, but you're watching it. And even the opening scene, you're like, oh my gosh, what is the rest of the film going to be like? But honestly, I thought that the opening scene was probably one of like the most intense in terms of like the grotesqueness and like the setting, and everyone's kind of jeering and like showing these really, very sexual sides of everyone. And I kind of thought that's like what the whole movie was going to be. But then again, you have this very like cupcake version of the life that she ends up creating when she decides to marry Mr. Linton. So, but yeah, the cheek walls were, I think, my favorite part of the movie because it's just so creative. I just don't understand how that comes to someone's mind and then being able to execute it. My biggest issue, I think, had to be with the fact that I probably saw the trailer so many times. And I thought that the kind of fun and games section of the film, when she goes to Mr. Linton's house and they show them kind of playing in the dollhouse, they're sitting at the table and eating breakfast, and you can kind of see that she's, Catherine's character isn't necessarily loving the life that she chose, but she's also having a little bit of fun. And I felt like they took that whole part and squeezed it into the trailer. And it killed me because I wanted that to be more dispersed or, I guess, better integrated with the rest of the movie. And it felt like they just it almost felt like a music video to me. And that was the part that I really struggled with. So I think a part of it maybe had to do with like my expectations of the film. But that section was also fantastic production design. So whether or not it really fit, I think, into the script and the flow of the movie, it was still enjoyable to watch.
I mean, the trailer, as much as I love this movie, the trailer was better than the movie, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But you're right. It picked kind of all of the very both visually interesting and very visceral parts of the movie, but all of them were in the trailer. They kind of didn't leave any surprises for us.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people's criticism around this film was that how it didn't live up to what people's expectations were in comparison to the book, which I feel like is just an unfair statement in general. I mean, this is an adaptation. This is not gonna be scene by scene what the book is. I feel like that stunts creativity. That's a separate issue. But my biggest complaints about this movie is just I felt like there were stretches of it that went on for too long and were not visually interesting, or they didn't have that kind of like Emerald Fennell visceral signature thing that she does. I think that could have just been some simple editing decisions, and a new cut of this movie I think I would have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I felt myself giving the same complaints about the editing, which made me feel like it wasn't necessarily a her decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said that before with Saltburn. Saltburn is, I think, a 10 out of 10 movie, except for the last 15 minutes, because they tell us what we should know instead of letting us make up our own interpretation of what happened. And I just don't feel like that was a her decision. So a part of me is convinced, and again, the cinephiles and critics are all going to come after me for saying this, but I'm just convinced that some of these bigger decisions are not always up to her. It doesn't feel consistent with the other parts that she shows us, but maybe I'm wrong. She is full of surprises, and she does a lot of things that she wants. So
let's talk about the performances. Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. What did you think about their casting in this? And what did you think about their performances? Because I also felt like I saw some criticism around these, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to preface with the fact that they're both making wonderful things, and I really love the both of them, and I really enjoy most things that they're in. Usually if their names are attached to it, I want to go see it. So that was definitely enough to draw me in for this. I'll start with something a little bit more comedic. I truly could not get over Jacob Elordi's gold tooth. It was a decision of the costume and makeup department to do that. I was so distracted. I'm sure some people thought it was very sexy. I personally liked toothless Jacob Elordi better. I am lukewarm, I think, on the both of them in this film. And again, I don't think it actually has to do with the performances. I think I don't love these characters. I think that they are very flawed, which characters should be. They need to be complex. But I just felt myself like not wanting to spend time with them. I think when they had the montage of them having the affair, that was very exciting to me, because that's kind of what I was waiting for. You know, the first half of the movie, which actually I think this is a positive because it shows the power of us wanting, of humans having this desire. I was like, I cannot believe that they don't even give us a kiss the first half of this film. The most erotic scene that we have with the two of them is the first time that Margot Robbie sees other people having sex, and he's a part of that experience, which I actually think is a really powerful scene. And then they're then able to take that when she's having sex with her husband and she wants that eroticism again. And I think that's actually just beautiful storytelling and very has a lot to do with human nature. So I think I like wanted that strength and that almost like, I don't know, like I just felt like there was almost like something missing, and I don't know what it was, but I didn't like fully believe their pull towards each other. Like it just felt like there was like something, there was an ingredient missing. They're both very beautiful. They both have this really, their characters have this very intense background of growing up with all this trauma together and protecting each other and having fun together, and then leaving their childhood and becoming, I guess, teenagers, but I couldn't really tell how old they were at a certain point where it's like that middle part. But then I think like who they grow into, especially Heathcliff, he's just, oh, like I couldn't find the juxtaposition of him being like flawed and fucked up and also good. Like I was trying to find the good parts of him. I was trying to search for that boy who was like taking a beating for her or doing these things for her. He just felt like he was trying to stir up conflict as a means to excite her. And I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with the performances. I just don't really like Catherine and Heathcliff, and I don't really think that they should be together.
Oh, hot take. I don't know that I agree with that. As you were describing their relationship and kind of this journey that we go on with them, and that, there's a lot of build up. I agree with you. I don't necessarily feel like it has the payoff that we're expecting. And in all the ways that we've talked about how Emerald Fennell doesn't hold back, and she does all of these crazy offbeat things in her films, I feel like what they did with the two of them did feel extremely held back to me. I read things that said that they were expecting, I guess, more explicit sex or seeing it earlier on. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but I felt like I wanted something more creative. I felt like all of those scenes where they were kind of having their affair could have been from any romantic movie. It didn't feel
Yeah.
special.
No, I think that's what I was trying to convey. I think that's what was missing. Where
Yeah.
it's like it's not necessarily maybe my thought of was like maybe they shouldn't be together because they have all this shit. The film didn't give us what it was needed to like convince us of the grand love story, instead
Yeah.
of just showing us these like this generic stretch of them
Yeah.
just like sneaking around while she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the big thing, is that she's pregnant and she's having this affair, which
I felt like it was too little too late. By the time that came out, I was like, oh, okay.
it almost didn't have enough like kindling of the fire. It was,
Or too much kindling. I don't know. It was
maybe there
all
was a lot
kindling.
of kindling and no fire ever. Maybe there was just too much rain. It was too wet in the mud and they never started the fire. I don't know. I think overall I definitely prefer toothless, sweaty, long-haired Jacob Elordi.
Yeah, same. I know that sounds surprising coming from me, but
I know, I cannot believe you liked him when she was like, "You stink." I was like, Michelle definitely does not like this scene.
But you know what? I am always a fan of people leaning hard into whatever their thing is.
Yeah.
And if that's who he is and that's what his thing is, then that's what he should be.
That is who he is. He's working the land. He's picking up hay. I don't even know. I don't know what the
draining pigs of their blood.
Yeah. I felt like both of them were holding back. I feel like overall there was like a hold back. Like I don't think we allowed them to get as wild as we wanted them to be, as wild as they are.
Yeah.
And I think especially like Jacob Elordi, he's been in so many things, but he's in the show Euphoria, which is, talk about a rot. It's a crazy show. And he has an insane character. So I know he has the capacity to go to these places. And I don't think he was like almost given the opportunity to.
I've never seen Euphoria, but
kind of in the same vein of this, like you don't really want to be watching it, but you are.
But I'm glad that you shared that, because I I sense that it almost felt like I didn't know if this was who his character was supposed to be or this was just his portrayal of him, but it felt like he wasn't doing all the things that he wanted to do the whole movie. And
Mhm.
not just literally, because I know that he wanted to be with Kathy, but yeah, I think you described it best. It felt a little held back.
What would be the aspects of it? Like, is there anything that comes to mind that you're like, "Oh, that would have been crazy."
I want the Emerald Fennell unfiltered notes on what her initial ideas were for this.
I just keep thinking about Saltburn and, like, this scene after Jacob Elordi takes a bath, like, that was a decision, and it
Mhm.
was disgusting,
Yeah, I
but,
wish that
like
I could get that out of my head. I think about often how I wish I
but at the
never saw
same
that, but
time, like,
also
she went there for
yeah.
that, and she didn't go there for this, or it wasn't at least it wasn't clear to me, like, and that feels as if there's something missing, that there were some other ideas in the idea jar that she either was advised to pull out or just didn't work for the film.
I was going to wait to talk about this scene, but since you already brought it up, the scene that you referenced earlier, like the first time that Catherine is seeing other people have sex, and that, I mean, I feel like that scene is probably one of the more out there or provocative scenes in the movie. But to me, that's the scene that worked the best. And I would say, like, other than her climbing over the wall scene, that was my favorite scene because I love creative uses of intimacy. And the easy thing, okay, on paper, we need people to be intimate. Let's make them have sex. Like that decision to have her kind of both be witnessing something like that for the first time and it being all dark and shadowy, and then kind of having him become part of that experience with her, but the two of them not being intimate was just so charged.
The strongest callback, which I had said earlier, is the fact that they literally, when make the scene
Yeah.
should have been so vanilla when she's having sex with her husband. She
Yeah.
hadn't even had sex with Heathcliff at that point, if you were thinking about it. Like, she's thinking about him all this time and wanting to replay that moment of them not
Yeah.
even having sex, but just having this intimacy. And she's like, how do I recreate this in
I
my
loved that.
bedroom that I'm in?
Loved.
So I wish that there were like 8 more of those moments
Mhm.
instead of just the montage scene of them like sneaking around and having sex in
Yeah, it was boring.
lifts and in cars and on, you know.
Carriages.
Yeah. I actually thought that one of the stronger scenes was because it added this element of like, are they gonna get caught? Is when he finds out that she is pregnant and they're like having sex like in her dining room or something. And they're just like
Mhm.
out in the open. I'm like, how is no one knowing what's going
A
on? I mean,
servant?
I guess Nellie
Yeah.
always knew what was
Yeah.
going on, but I was because it added a layer, I guess, of like excitement that something would happen with this big affair. But yeah, I think it could have gone weirder than the cheek wall licking. I think there could have been more. Do you think that Heathcliff's actions are coming from a place of genuine love or desire? I'm gonna morph desire and trauma in one.
I think it is a combination of all of those things, but really mixed with fear. Catherine is his person that he has been trying to protect his whole life, but that has also been the person who is protecting him. I think it goes both ways. And I think every action that he takes in this story is in service of ensuring that the two of them never lose each other.
So trauma bonded.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
Yeah,
it. This is
yeah,
the definition of that.
right.
Yeah. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing, but the story also didn't end in the best way. So it didn't feel like a disconnect for me. How about you? Did you have a different take on that?
Like, he cares for her so much, of course, but there is this element of it not because they've known each other since such a important age, and he was really protecting her, shielding her from a lot of scary things from a young age. It's almost like he wants to save her, but he also like needs her to save himself,
Mhm.
which is very complicated and very muddy. I keep using muddy. And that's why I don't really believe it's a true love,
Mhm.
because there's always going to be this element of like them needing to create messes that they can each pick up the pieces so that they have something to bond and like be horny over. Their desire comes from the need to fix, which can get a little bit dicey.
I think it's a survival tactic.
Yeah. So, what qualities of Catherine do you see in yourself or other characters in the film that do you most resonate with?
There is a character that I resonated with a bunch. I want to talk about Nellie, who is Catherine's nurse, caretaker, but also a friend, almost a big sister, even though she is someone who was employed by her family and then kind of goes to be employed by the Lintons. I did not know how we were supposed to read her. If she was a good guy or a bad guy, if we were supposed to like her or not like her, agree with her decisions, or say, "What are you doing?" And she is the character that I related to the most. I think maybe it's a little bit of that, big sister energy that that I have and that, I was getting from her, but also being conflicted by, I guess, following the rules in all the ways that she told on Kathy and that information that she held back from her that could have led her to be in a relationship with Heathcliff. I felt like part of me wanted to believe she was doing it in Kathy's best interest, but I don't know. Was it also in Ellie's best interest?
Mhm.
Was it both? I don't know. Well, I'm dying to hear this has been like the number one question I've been wanting to hear your thoughts on.
I feel like actually this one is really easy for me.
Okay.
I felt really bad for Nellie. I think they did a good job of setting that up from the beginning, that basically when Heathcliff comes into the picture, Nellie, they were best friends and they are best friends, but she's completely cast aside. And we kind of see this really icky side of Catherine come out, sort of, I think, emulating who her dad is a little bit, of treating the people around her as garbage, and that she works for her and she's nothing more than a servant. She's not a friend, and is very easy to flip that switch. So I felt like, especially the younger version of Nellie, I felt really delicate towards. Like, I didn't think that anyone in the film really gave her the respect that she deserved. But I think that the execution of Nellie, it felt, I didn't read the book, but if I had to imagine, it feels like it was just taken from the book and like slapped on a character. Like, I don't think that she was really able to give much to the film and much to Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship. To me, it felt very scripted. Like, it was like Nellie is the person and is the reason in the film that there is conflict between why Catherine and Heathcliff cannot be together. That's your purpose in this film. Show up and do the scenes, and people are going to hate this character because she's the one that sabotaged them from the beginning. So I think that was like my focus throughout the film, of like, this is so dry. And yeah, I don't like her because, of course, like, she's creating all of these issues that don't necessarily have to be there. But I also was very sympathetic towards her
Yeah.
and felt like she was treated horribly by these people who are supposed to kind of be her family. And yeah, it sucks that she's burning letters and doing all these things, and she can kind of stop all these tragedies before they're happening. But I really think that her intention is also coming from a place of like, I want love and I want belonging, and no one's here looking out for me. And Catherine's the only person that I've ever had as like close enough to a friend, and Heathcliff is the one that's keeping me from her. And I also know that he's not really good for her.
I think I kept having a separation in my mind of me, the person watching this story who wants the two people who are in love to be together, and hating this person that's standing in the way, but then also watching it through the lens of, okay, but what if I was her and I was in this story? And again, I think that she's another one of these people who are just trying to survive, and this was her survival tactic. This is how she was going to have a job and stay in Kathy's life. As messed up as those decisions were, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done in her shoes.
I probably wouldn't have done what she did.
It was
If it
kind of
was
an
me.
extreme.
If you had to change, if you don't have to, if you had to change anything about the ending, what would you have done differently? And what are your just general thoughts about the way that this film ended?
There were things that I liked about the ending. The truest version of me felt like her death felt unnecessary, and I was angered by it. But from a person who's looking at this purely from a story perspective and what the vibe of this movie is and how tragic these characters' lives are, it made complete sense, and it felt fitting. And I especially loved that we got this heartbreaking but still gorgeous in a bad way visual at the end with all of that blood in the pink fleshy room. That is the ending that we should have gotten from, based on how the rest of this movie went and how dark and depressing this story is. So from that point of view, I liked it. Again, flipping back to the just me as a simple movie watcher, not with my writer's hat on, liked that we had this kind of stinger of an ending with going back to them as kids. It felt really like sweet and heartwarming, and it didn't end the movie on as high note as you can get it for a movie like this. But again, flipping back to writer me was like, I don't know that that was necessarily fitting for, or it didn't really match the rest of the movie. I didn't feel like we deserved to have a happy ending. So I'm wondering if that was a note from somebody else, and maybe not how Emerald intended this movie to end.
I didn't even remember that they did a flashback to them as kids. I need to rewatch because I was so distracted by the tragic ending. I don't know if you'll be surprised by this, but I really don't do well with certain medical decisions in films. And again, I'm gonna preface it again. It has nothing to do with the filmmakers. I'm like getting nauseous thinking about it because of her losing the baby, which is like such an intense decision in the film, and then to physically show it on her legs. And I know it's like throwing everything that I'm saying out the window because Emerald went there and she decided to make all these decisions, but like this is why it's just not for me, because I cannot watch these types of things. It's too much for me. But the way that you just described like the fleshiness of the leeches, I like at first was also a little queasy about it, but the actual that shot of like the leeches going up the wall is so powerful, and it's kind of like the ultimate till death do us part visual, is like he just, ironically wanted to be holding her hand the day that she died, and he just couldn't get there in time because they were sabotaging it. I think that I didn't like the ending because of that. Because I just I could not watch the way that her legs like turned purple. Like I almost had to leave the theater during that part. And I think also just the fact that it's like she was sick and like the baby passed away and she was like alone and in this really horrible, fragile state that like he left her. And I think if I were to redo it, Emeralds needs to do what she has to do. She's a queen and we love her. I would have just had her die like from a broken heart. Like I literally would have had her lose the will to live because she thought that he left her. And they probably still could have done the leeches because they just thought she was sick. But I could have done without some of the other other parts. I would pick the semen tub every time over that scene.
Wow, it's so funny, like the things that we can handle and the things that we can't. There was such a separation in my mind in watching that scene that I felt like I was just looking at a really old paint. You know, so many like old paintings, like the kind of paintings that we see in museums, are these really tragic, horrific scenes, and I felt like that's
Yeah.
I think I was able to separate the emotion of what Kathy, the character, was going through in that moment, and was just, maybe this was my like protecting my, my emotions or whatever. But I really was just, I think, looking at that scene visually and then zooming out and saying, okay, what is an appropriate ending for a movie like this? But Laura, writer wise, I know you're so disturbed by the scene that it may be hard for you to think clearly. You didn't think that ending was so much more appropriately in tone with what this movie was than like their affair segment?
Yeah, no, I don't think the affair, I don't know. I struggle with
Sorry,
things.
not trying to be like,
So the thing,
book up, Laura.
it's so ridiculous for me to say as a woman who's never had a baby, never experienced pregnancy loss, any of these extreme things that women go through. But I think I'm just very compassionate and saddened by like the things that women's bodies experience.
Yeah.
Which is like a real thing. I mean, again, it's taking it to this very extreme visual level, but I think it's like very difficult for me to watch those things. I mean, they're not really no-goes because I'll still watch it, but I'm gonna have
Some trauma.
have some feelings after the movies. I'm not gonna want to finish my Sour Patch Kids.
All right. Well, let's end our story this episode on a lighter note. We're not going to do our traditional fake dinner party, but I would like to know if you could invite any of these awful people to a dinner party, who are you picking?
Honestly, probably like the maids at Catherine's house and not even Nellie. Just anyone that works for her family because they are going to have the best gossip. They're going to tell you everything that's going on. So you know it's going to make for it being a really eventful evening. You know that they're bringing some good, strong mead and probably a slaughtered animal that's well cut up and cooked and prepared. Mr. Linden is probably the only like kind person in this movie, but not a good dinner party companion. Isabella gives me anxiety. I don't want to have to wear a Jesus cross.
I think that's a solid choice. I was thinking Mr. Linton is I know that the Ringer does this on a lot of their movie podcasts. They often will cite like the person who seems like they're in a completely different movie, and I think
Yes.
that's Mr. Linton's look, he doesn't even really look like he belongs in this era. I
He
feel
has
like
no idea what's going on.
I feel like he's kind of like the only, if I were bringing someone as a guest to a dinner party, he wouldn't, cause any problems. But I kind of feel like if I were going to a dinner party and wanted to walk out of there with some really good stories, I would hope that someone like Isabella would be a guest.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I know we barely touched on her. I'm very curious what she's like in the book, because anxious is a great word to use, because like you don't know what she's going to do, but she's a character. We'll give her
Yeah,
that.
she is. And I love Alison Oliver, who also was in Saltburn, and
She's great. She did a great job.
we will have more questions in all of our episodes coming up. Our Regency season has ended. This was a long horse ride through the prairie. I will say I didn't think we were going to make it at some point.
Only a few illnesses.
Didn't knock us down all the way. We will be returning for another themed season. Highly anticipated season. We can tease this out. We are going to be doing a sports season. So if you don't like sports, still listen.
Well, I'll speak for myself. I've never played a sport in my life. No, we're not. This is going to be a sports season coming from two not very sporty girls.
Make sure you tune in. And if you haven't listened to our previous season and you're still in the mood for love, listen to all of our Valentine's Day episodes, our Regency episodes, and back in our catalog of some fun stuff we have from previous seasons.
All right. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.